Wow. Actual piracy on the Piracy Show. I know. Crazy. So, what you're looking at basically is experimentation with interdiction, or the current implementation of interdiction. There is a mantis out there that is catching ships for us, and we're essentially feeding ships into the trap and testing out what does it look like when they appear, what distance, what's the best setup, and just having conversations around that. The reason why there's no audio is, of course, that this is a group play situation. And even though I do record these, I delete the audio from them simply because, I want people to be able to, have conversations and speak freely and, speak their mind and not think that, oh my God, this is going to get thrown up on YouTube every time I do that. And I'm certainly not going to turn around to my org, which I'm a member of, not an owner of, and say, hey, by the way, you guys have to play to benefit my YouTube channel. It generally is not something that's going to sell all that well within a group. But what did I think? What did I think of interdiction in its current implementation? Well, it is what I expected it to be, almost one for one, exactly what I expected it to be. There are very limiting. You have to be very, very careful about where you put down your mantis, and you got to kind of draw a point between two spots and then pick a decent area to interdict in that location. Where they drop out is at the end or the edge of your bubble, and if they're already hauling ass, it can make catching up to them a real chore. The mantis, of course, runs out of power if it runs its weapons and its bubble, so it can lose that. All the things that generally we already know, right? As a first tier implementation, I think that it's okay. I wasn't all that hyped on it. I still kind of wish that Quantum was something more. Maybe something closer to the Elite Dangerous model and further removed from the EVE Online model of, the interdiction spheres in EVE Online, if you've ever played around with those. And when I'm speaking about that, of course, I'm talking about what it was for us back in the day of Red Moon Rising and right post that, because I haven't played EVE Online since. Just not a healthy game emotionally to play. For me, anyways. But yeah, as a first implementation, it's all right. It's okay. I would like to see some general changes, and I think that we are going to see some broad changes. So when you're testing things like this, it's important to remember that this is highly fluid and it's going to shift around, and it is not something that is going to remain as is. There's probably going to be a full revisit of this, much like there is to the flame model and various other things. We are going to see an enhanced and improved version of this. So, this is just the learning experience. This is just getting out there, teething, seeing what the limitations are, and then, trying to learn from them and improve the overall system. I kind of feel like having the two spheres on the mantis is kind of redundant, honestly. I think that it should just be the one sphere setting that you open up. I'm okay with, if you're running your shields, or you're dumping power into your shields or dumping extra power into your weapons because you're running your weapons all the time, then yes, you should lose your ability to interdict. But I think that this sort of idea of, it's two different interdiction spheres. There's one that pulls you out of quantum, and there's one that keeps you from going into quantum. To me, that's why it's an unnecessary complication, and it's cumbersome. I think one should serve both purposes. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that. I'm willing to, give this a chance. If this is the way that it's going to be, fine, I'll adapt to it. But that's the one change in that respect that I would like to see made. If it stays this way going into the future, the one sphere should do both jobs. Not, okay, now let me change over to this one. Unnecessary complication, I think. especially when, you think about the Mantis is then going to have to pursue the ship, especially if it's moving, and then follow it, as it tries to escape and keep that sphere up to keep it from getting away. That is one thing that I would like to see changed. And I kind of feel like we're also at a point where, if you do pull off a successful interdiction of a ship, it may be a time to start talking about coordinates and being able to map and save certain coordinates, because when you're chasing a ship down, you don't realize it. That's moving you off the line of, where you're trying to interdict. So when you keep this, when you have the sphere up, other ships might just keep going by. Now, there are some pluses to that, because you don't have to worry about, reinforcements being dropped right on top of you, unintentional reinforcements, let's say. But I think that we are kind of getting to a point where, setting it up should be probably a little bit more difficult, so I can see an argument against it. But I would like to experiment with the idea of being able to set up a permanent interdiction coordinate that you can just warp to without having to go and do the whole setup. But once again, we'll see how this develops. We'll see how this grows in the future. Now, the current impact on the game isn't that much, because there aren't really that many active mantises out there. You travel around in the universe, and it's like seeing a mantis is like seeing a herald. It's like, oh yeah, those still exist. It's not that prevalent and it's not that popular, but I think that into the future, when we get the module that actually does the quantum interdiction as well, that we can equip onto different ships, we're going to enter into an area where this might be a much more, what would be the right word? This would be a much more pervasive activity. This would be an activity that you'd be much more aware of. You'd be seeing it a lot more once ease of access into interdiction kind of hits the general populace, and not just the owners of the Mantis out there who are actually doing interdiction. I think that we are kind of entering into a spot there where interdiction may become far too present. And certainly if you remember in the last few patches, whenever interdiction was dialed up to like 99, and we were getting interdicted 3 or 4 times, even on a short quantum jump, it was ridiculous. And it was not something that really fed into what I would call healthy or enjoyable gameplay. Certain amount of challenge, a certain amount of thrill, a certain amount of danger, I think enhances gameplay. But when it's so in your face all the time, it definitely doesn't do anything for us. I think it becomes kind of a downer in the game, and something that you don't look forward to. It's like, oh well, I got a quantum from Area 18 all the way to Crusader. Well, time to get interdicted 20 times. No one enjoyed that. Even if the NPCs that interdicted you could just shoot them down and it was no problem, which you could. It was such a pain in the ass. It really did it was such a drag. And if we're getting into a point where interdiction becomes, that omnipresent activity, because all of a sudden every player can, or many players can, access this module and put it on their ship and interdict and basically ambush other players, I don't think that it's going to make the game fun. I think that what would need to happen before we get to that point is, one, we need to get NPC cargo haulers into the game. We need to get cargo ships traveling from point A to point B in the game that are worth something, because in order for Star Citizen to really work as a PvP title, and there's a lot of people out there who still think that it shouldn't be one, even though it was started as an open world PvP game. In order for it to kind of achieve its balance, I think there needs to be certain attractive targets out there for players where, you know, if a pirate's out there and they're just trying to make money and they're looking at, you know, the guy that may escape from them versus the NPC who's more predictable, they might say, you know what, we know that these certain routes are really busy with NPCs, therefore we're going to basically farm these routes, and players will learn, oh, this is the route that's being interdicted right now, this is where the security alerts are coming from, maybe I should avoid it and go a different way. I'm in favor of a healthier system like that to a certain degree, and I think that in order to kind of give it a much more realistic representation in the game and a much more tolerable representation in the game, I think you need to have that certain distraction out there for pirates, and I think it's something that is kind of overdue, along with the ability to, you know, for these ships to spawn the larger kind of cargo crates, you know, the big ones that I'm talking about. When you go and you buy cargo at a station, you get the big crates instead of the little ones, so that when a ship, let's say like this Caterpillar, gets attacked and interdicted, it drops the larger cargo crates that you can then tractor up into the cargo bays of the Cutlass. You know, one of the drawbacks of the Cutlass, and something that, you know, we've had since the very beginning with the Cutlass, is the problem of transitioning from zero gravity into the gravity environment of the ship. I would also like to see the option to turn the gravity generators within the ship off, like just a simple on-off switch. Something like that, so that when you're kind of loading cargo into a ship like this, you don't have to deal with your character all of a sudden having a seizure or a spasm because they've transferred into a gravity environment, you know. That transition has always been really rough, and it's something that has created a lot of problems for CIG in the past. And I think just having the simple option to turn the gravity generators in your ship off or on or off whenever you want, and then just maybe even having magnetic floor plates so that you can just kind of make the crates just kind of go like boom and just stick down to your cargo deck would be something really handy and something good to have in the game. We bring those pieces together and all of a sudden you have piracy that actually works. You have very juicy targets out there for pirates, so they're not out there 100% just harassing other players, because that's the only thing that really pirates can do right now. And I think that that gives an unfair representation of piracy within the game, because it's making it look like it's just 24/7, that's all that there is, because right now other players are really all that there is, right? I mean, we've gone in good directions with the, you know, with certain updates to the security system and to the, you know, the crime stat system in the game, but I think we need to go a little bit further, and we have to introduce, even at the very basic level, even if, you know, they just randomly spawn on the quantum route, there needs to be NPC cargo haulers. There needs to be certain routes that are juicy that maybe pirates will fight over so that they can camp the route, things like that. I think I would like to see elements like this come together, and I think once we have all that, we'll have a much more realistic representation of what piracy is going to be about in the in its you know, in a final version, and then we can really start to have some meaningful conversations about the balance within the game. Because right now, you know, you go on the Spectrum and people are talking about remove PvP from the game and all this stuff like that, and I think that that's based on the unrealistic representation of what piracy and crime is going to be like in the Star Citizen universe, because of the limited tools that we have currently in the game. So that was kind of my first impression of quantum interdiction, some of my recommendations going into the future. So you can just go ahead and implement those, because, you know, obviously it's right. Anyways, yeah, overall, so some drawbacks, but I think that if it's tooled the right way, with some minor changes, I think that this could become a livable system, a usable and practical system. Just, I think that there's some overall changes to the broader game that need to happen to really kind of harness its potential and not give it, you know, such a negative drawback to the rest of the universe that it just becomes a problem. So, yeah. Anyways, that's the show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.